Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this series of webinars of Living from Yourself. Tonight, we're going to talk about change leadership. We will explore topics related to the self awareness intensive. That's why we are here. We are curious. We want to know more. My name is Marina Castillo Rigo, and I'm here with Giulio Frason. What are we going to talk about today?
Thank you, Marina. Today is the time for change leadership. So, the goal of tonight is to understand how we can lead more from ourselves, to lead our changes in the direction of more authenticity. And this brings two sides, like two sides of a coin, that are both important. One is how to bring more authenticity in the choices we are involved in, because basically everybody is always immersed in some choices. And the other side of the coin is how we can make choices that bring more authenticity into our lives. So I would start from giving a short resume of last webinar of the series that was Unmasking Yourself, in which we discussed the practical importance of authenticity. So we're not going to go through that again, but just to name it, we saw also through data and researches how being more authentic is fundamental for happiness, for purpose, and for values in our life. And we saw that the fact that being authentic, being more authentic, has a cost. So it involves taking risks. As we joked, it's a hard work to be ourselves. It's not something that comes automatically, also because we have at the same time a strong push towards conformism. So the necessity to be similar to the others around us and how much this influences us. So it requires an active energy to go towards authenticity, but it also releases self energy. So the more we are ourselves, the more we make choices that bring out more of our values, of our authentic qualities, and more we release this energy and we become more resilient. And then we can invest again this energy in other authenticity choices. We define what it is that we call authenticity. It has some qualities to it. To be authentic means knowing our values, motives, and emotions, and identity. Being able to objectively evaluate our strengths and weaknesses without denial or distortions. Acting in alignment with our inner values and beliefs, even under social pressure, and also being honest and transparent in relationship, letting others see the real us. And we also touched the areas in which we can express our authenticity. So the areas in which we are unique, we all are different, that are our needs. We all have different needs. The body has needs, the mind has needs, our way of expressing our emotions and to receive other people's emotions is different from one another. The values that we have, so the things that are very important for us, our character traits, our temperament, if we are more mild-mannered, if you are more passionate, and our skills. There are some things that are innate, so that some abilities that we have and some things that we develop. And we all differ in these several elements in which we can look for a higher level of authenticity, of expressing ourselves, of being ourselves. And for tonight's topic, we are going to talk about how to bring this authenticity into the changes of our life. So the first of the two aspects I mentioned before was to bring more authenticity in the choices we are involved in. So last time we saw the importance of being authentic, and tonight we see what we can do with that. Once we have established that we want to go towards authenticity, because it was a good question, but why should we be more authentic? But we answered that last time. Now we have established that we want to be more authentic, and we want to see how we can do that in our practical changes in everyday life. Everybody is more or less involved in choices and decisions all the time. So every time we evaluate what we show of ourselves, or if we have to buy something on Amazon, the prices and the offers. But of course, there are choices that are more important than others. And there are also life phases where we have particularly important decisions to make. And here is the part where we want also to interact a little bit with you.
We're going to name some of these areas where we have to make these important choices, and we'll see maybe that you start to get a little nervous. And there's no pressure in answering these questions. You're free to see it's also what you feel in answering these questions. So get ready. So we're going to name these areas of choices, and you can give a score from 1 to 5 how you live this area of your life.
How much this is a choice you're making from 1 to 5 in this moment.
Maybe I can put them in the chat also to say yes or no to a relationship.
1, it's not an area of choice in this moment of your life to say yes or no to a relationship. 5, it's definitely an area of choice in your life. It's an area in which you are required to make a choice in this moment of your life.
Exactly. How present is it in your life?
Okay.
The second area is to choose to trust someone or not.
How much this is an area of choice in this moment.
The next one, changing a little bit topic, to start a company or a work project. So something related to work, something new.
It could be also, for example, to choose to become self-employed or to change job or to start an important project also within your own job.
This is very present for some people. To choose a career path. Here is another one that might agitate some people. To choose where to live. Are you thinking about changing where to live, or are you happy where you are? And no, it's not something that I need to choose at the moment.
Wow, this is very present.
Some people are happy where they live. They don't need to choose. Another one. To buy or to rent a house.
So which house to buy or which house to rent? So the housing problem. And there are also other areas that we want to name. They give us even more higher pressure. That are the areas of choice in which we are responsible for others or in which others rely on us.
Like when we are parents.
So parenting choices. Or when we are educators, not necessarily a parent, but we could be an uncle, an aunt, or
Parents,
a
educators,
teacher,
caretakers, see,
caretaker.
educators. Another area is when we are leaders of a group, we have to make choices. So how much is this area present?
When you have to decide for others, for example, the tasks, the assignments, the things they have to do, their professional goals.
And the last area is when we are partners. So when we have a partner, when we are in a relationship.
So the choices we are making when our partner rely on us. Choices that affect our partners, and we are the ones that have to make them.
Very good. There could be many areas that we could explore, but here was mostly to make you see that there are some areas in which we have choices to make, and how authentic we are in making these choices has some important implications.
Second part of the exercise. So now we go a little bit more into detail. Choose one area of the one that you mentioned, one that had a high score. At most two. Then in a second moment, you can also, if you want, evaluate all the others. But now choose one that is particularly pressing in this moment.
How difficult is this area of choice for you from
Yeah.
1 to 5?
So how much pressure it puts on you, how much it is a difficult choice to make. Okay.
And then related to this same area that you have chosen, how much are you procrastinating it? How much are you procrastinating making decisions and choices in this area? Also from 1 to 5.
You know when it's the moment of collecting more data and when it's actual procrastination. It's the difficulty of making the choice. You have the information, but then it's hard to make the choice. How much are you actually procrastinating it?
We have some twos, so it means that they are making decisions. They are not
Good.
procrastinating it. Good. The last one is, how much do you feel that you need to make this choice? That it's important for you to make this choice?
It could be that you need to make this choice or that you desire to make this choice.
Here it's quite higher for everyone, for most people. Super.
So this just was to steer the waters, to make us feel the pressure and sometimes the doubts that we have or the elements at stake when we are making a decision in these important areas. And also to see that there are different weights of the different choices that we are making. And these big decisions, we tremble a little bit in front of them because when it's this kind of decisions, they set up a reality. So when we make a choice, like where to live, for example, or to say yes or no to a relationship, this sets up a reality and brings consequences. We are always free to change directions. We are always free to make other choices, but we are also responsible for our creations. To change direction, if we move to the Netherlands or if we move to Portugal, we decided it was the wrong choice and we had to move somewhere else, yeah, we can do that, but it has a cost in terms of time, resources, experiences that we lose, because we are responsible for our creation, or even the pain we cause sometimes in other people's lives. It has a cost. So we are responsible. If you start a family and then you decide to split, it's possible, luckily, now in this modern society, but it has a cost because we are responsible for the creations that we start. So when we have these questions, one very important, when we have these decisions, these choices to make, one very important question to ask ourselves is, why are we doing what we are doing? So why do we feel the pressure or the tendency to choose in a certain direction compared to another direction? Why are we not choosing? So the why is quite important because when we ask ourselves why we're doing what we're doing, when we are choosing to say yes or no, or we are stuck, why are we stuck in that decision? Then we can give ourselves two different kinds of answers. There's a more shallow answer, a shallower answer, that usually brings out external reasons and common sense reasons. So maybe we are choosing that house because it has the best heating system, or because we're choosing that person because, I don't know, we have some matching characteristics on Tinder, or all the things that we can evaluate from the outside. But then there is a deeper level of answer to this question, to the why question, that then talks about our inner motivations. And this brings out the difference between choices that we made that are based on our mind, on our protective mind or defensive mind, and choices that we make that come from the self, that comes from our awareness, our self-awareness, from our deep values and motivations.
Can be quite challenging to distinguish one or the other, to see
Yes,
where am I making this decision from? Am I making it because I really want this, because it's for myself, it's a calling based on my values, or is this more my mind that is
yeah.
trying to protect me, that is looking at the more logical, safe way, no? Mm-mm.
Yeah, and the first important thing is to make this question, to ask this question, because not everybody asks themselves why they're making the choices they're making, even important ones. And we can say some elements that help us distinguish it's a mind-based choice and when it's a self-based choice. So mind-based choices tend to be driven by fear, desire, control or conditioning. So, are we running away from something? Are we trying to control something by saying yes or no to a relationship, to a job, to a project? Are we saying yes to a project because we think it's what our boss believes we wants, or it's maybe that answers, are we saying yes to a person because that maybe is the kind of person that our parents would approve unconsciously, maybe. Often also mind-based choices have involve trade-offs. So they're not choices that are self-standing, but there's a hidden motive to the choice. So we try to not be alone, we try to not feel unworthy or not to be excluded. There's a secondary goal. And when we make these choices, it feels effortful, anxious, strategic, and it actually usually it has a certain level of regret, overthinking, or internal conflict. It's like it has a doubt inside. Even if we make the choice, there's always a certain proportion of doubt inside. Let's see instead what are the characteristics of a self-based choice. When we make choices based on our self, they are driven by presence, intuition, alignment, inner clarity. So it's like we know that we have to do that thing, that is the right thing to do. That is the authentic thing to do, the thing that brings out more aligned to who we are. They involve wholeness, coherence, intrinsic meaning. By choosing the choice, this creates more sense of presence, more sense of inner coherence into ourselves. It relaxes us, that part of ourselves, even if it has a cost, even if it's not a popular choice, even if it's not what other people expect. And it feels like clear, quiet, resolved, and sometimes mysterious. So sometimes we don't know why that's the right thing to do. That's the right thing to choose. So we don't know, we don't see already everything. But on a certain level, we know that's what we have to do. That resonates within ourselves in a different way that when it's a reactive thing and when it's a protective mind thing. And it leads to peace, authenticity, integrity. Usually there are no doubts there. Maybe, Marina, can you help us with some example of a mind-based choice?
Mine, the first here also the participants they might have come up with their own choices, which they feel, this choice was more mental, and this choice, I don't know why I did it, but it felt right. It's a bit these two different feelings. For example, a fear-based choice like this, it can be like, I like someone, there is a person in my life that maybe I'm not completely sure if I want to follow a path with that person, but from the fear of not wanting to be alone, from the fear of wanting to live with someone, I say yes to a person, even though maybe I doubt it or I'm overthinking completely, like we said. But there is this trade off. There is like this secondary goal where I say, well, I choose this person because I will gain something. Maybe because, I don't know, in my case, if they have a boat and I want to go live on a boat, maybe it's not the right person for me, but I could choose it because I have this gain behind it. This is very mind-based. Whereas this self-based choice, as Julia said, being more intuitive, sometimes the mind might even criticize these self-based choices. No, it might try to sabotage it because it doesn't make sense. But
Or we
inside,
cannot explain it to others,
or you can't
to our
explain it.
important others.
Yes, you can't explain it, but inside you feel that it's the right choice. There is this alignment of your values when you feel that your values are being respected, that there's this peace to it. It's just authentic. Like when you feel that a certain job is for you, but you don't know why, or other people would say, you are crazy, why are you taking this job? It doesn't make sense. But you feel that it's right.
Yeah.
Can you identify, no, I'm asking these other participants, the people that are listening, the recording, these two different type of choices, ones which are rational, like for example, also here is another one that comes like when your parents want you to follow a certain career path because they have done it, but inside you feel that it's not for you. And it takes that courage, that authenticity, that jumping into the unknown of being honoring your values, honoring that choice that you want to take. Mm-mm. And they
Yeah.
are, see, see.
So maybe you are feeling within yourself that the taste of when you have done some choices that were mind-based, and the inner conflict, the doubts that came after that. So never being sure that if that was the right choice, or always some level, even when there was a positive outcome of your choice in a work, for example, maybe you have started a successful career, or but always that element that there is something missing, or that it didn't really respond to the expectations or the inner desires. And when you instead the taste of when you have made a choice that was based on the self, so that was really an expression of authenticity. Marina mentioned courage. Usually it's the choices in which we are more courageous, or sometimes we can also see the split, the moment in which we could have chosen one direction and we chose the other, the temptations that sometimes to conform and choose maybe a more mind-based choice, or to go to a self-based choice, and the consequences on when we chose one path or the other. So these tend to be experiences that we have. The, Trying to understand if we are deciding, or if we are being pushed more by our mind, or more by ourself, by our values, is an important question to ask ourselves and to answer. And when we start seeing the deeper level of our motives, we can ask some further questions. The first is that motive good enough to pursue that choice? So is that not being alone, for in the example of Marina, good enough to choose to say yes to that relationship, or not? And if we answer yes, so it's a good enough motive to say yes to that relationship, is that choice really is it really going to bring me the desired outcome, or is it just an illusion? And here we tend to see that when it's a mind-based choice, usually, even when we are successful, as I said, we don't get the desired outcome. Because basically, when we are driven by our mind, we are answering to needs and desires that are not of the present, but that are of the past. It's things that we should have received in a different moments of our lives. Maybe also now we have the need of being in a loving relationship, or not being alone, not being excluded. But when we are driven by our mind, there's part of that need that is not of the present, it's of the past. And even if we partly answer to the need of the present, the need of the past remains unresolved, remains unanswered. And that's part of the reason why, when we choose with our mind only, when we have second motives, when we have these hidden goals, we are unsatisfied. It's like when we reach the top of a hill and we look immediately to the next one, because there's not the completeness we were looking for. And that's a very different sensation instead when we are making decision based on ourself, on the self, on our values. Because the nature of, so let's explore, let's go now into the nature of the choices that are based on the self, that come from the self. The main characteristic is that they are self-standing. So if you really ask, so if you make this, if you ask yourself that question, so why are you really doing this? Why are you really choosing this? And then you can go back into, you can go deeper and deeper. I choose this person because it's reliable. And why do you choose a reliable person? I choose a reliable person because I don't want to be alone. And why don't you want to be alone? I don't want to be alone because then I feel that I'm useless. But when you are choosing from the self, at a certain moment, there is no answer to that question. So why are you really doing this? And the answer will be only, it will be because I chose it, because it's me. There is no further level to that. And basically, it's not an external motive. It's not a reasoning process. Yes, we use our mind in our choices. It gives us precious informations and includes our taste. It includes our personal ways of doing things, our needs. But in the end, when we choose from the self, it's a self-standing choice. It doesn't require external motivation. It has an extrinsic quality to it. And that's very different. It has a very different taste because that's when we are totally responsible for our choice. And usually there is no doubt because in that case, there might be difficulties, but there is no doubt because that's us. The choice expresses us. And we don't need to give answers to being ourselves. We don't need to explain why we are ourselves. We just are like that. So this quality of self-standing choice, it's really the taste of the choices that are driven from our values and from ourselves. And this brings us to the second question with which we opened our seminar. How can we make choices that bring more authenticity into our lives? And here is when we have to start talking about the self-awareness intensive because, yeah, there are many ways, but a very practical way in which we can be able to understand the whys behind our choices, behind our tendencies, understand, go to that deeper level of awareness of why we're doing what we're doing, and also to have some direction to what it means to make choices that are led by the self, and also how to distinguish the space of the mind and the space of the self. That's really the area of intervention of the self-awareness intensive, a very practical way of proceeding in this direction. So,
Many people listening to when we were saying the difference between the mind-based choices and the self-based choices might say, but how can I understand, no, not only time, but how can I experience the difference between these two? Let's say that
yeah,
participating at the self-awareness intensives, you can come very close to this self, which many people might not know what it is, don't have clarity on it. And it's a space
yeah.
where you go towards this self and knowing it more, experiencing it more, making it more present in your life, it originates more choices from that self. No, it's like cultivating this space inside of us to then be able to originate or realize when we are originating choices from the self. Very beautiful.
Yeah, for many decades, also in the psychological sciences, there wasn't a distinction between mind and self. It was more a thing of religion and more a thing of spirituality. And from the 70s, but mainly later with the third wave of psychology, then this distinction starts to be present also in more and more authors and schools. So there is a clear distinction between the mental functions that are mediated by the brain and a self that is the seat of consciousness, that is the who lives the things that we live. And but still, even if we theoretically start to accept this distinction, then it's not very easy to tell the difference, to understand who is us and what is temporary, what is fleeting, because the mind is always fleeting. It's always changing all the time. So also another distinction is that choices made with the mind are based on things that will change, and also choices made from the body, because mind and body all change all the time. Who we are, so the self, the consciousness, instead remains the same. Yeah, also values can change, but in a way they stay true to something that is who we are, more stable. Their expression changes, the way of, or sometimes the priority changes with the phase of life, but there are some elements that are really deeply rooted in who we are. Some things that the self-awareness intensive bring to the table of choices, of being able to make choices that are more self-led. One is a space in which we will meet, in which we will encounter and also be able to express the doubts that we have. The intensive brings out the things that are open in our life, the exploration of the things that are open. So all the doubts, the difficulties that we have in some choices that we are making, it creates a space in which we can release the tension of the emotional tension that sometimes puts us in a stalemate in making some choices. And it also give space for questioning and seeing the doubts that we have that sometimes we don't even admit to ourselves, in communicating the fears that we have. So it reveals a deeper part that we not always see, and by seeing it we are also more able to let it go. It allows us to bring out our deepest motivations, and in the end to be able to tell what is our protective mind that is talking, our inner parts that are talking, and what is the self that is showing itself. But how does it do this in practice?
And only
Yeah.
just to say, before you say how this takes place in the intensive, just to clarify or expose that it's not that you go to the intensive with these questions, existential questions, and I go there and all my questions will be resolved. Absolutely not. But it's a space where they emerge and you can allow yourself to see them more profoundly, to communicate them, and what is true remains true, and what is not true that we thought was no also maybe decisions that we've made with our mind, expressing them, they become more clear, and maybe some of them we see that we are no longer aligned with that, and because we communicate it, because you bring it out, you can see it more clearly. Yes,
Yeah,
wanted
a
to.
good thing to say. The goal of the intensive is very clear, is to experience directly who we are. So to have a direct experience of who we are, and also of what life is, what is the other human being, and what we are. But we don't want to just learn more data on ourselves, but we want to have a direct experience of who we are. And in doing this, a byproduct of this is that all the doubts that we have, all the identifications that we have, all the conundrums in which we are in, all the difficult choices that they come out. They find a place to come out, because it's the thing that the things we are identified with are the things that separate from ourselves from the direct experience of who we are. So it's really moving from a space of the mind to the space of the self. To do that, there is a technique that combines meditation and communication. You work on an existential question: who am I? And you work intensively for 3 days, non-stop. It's really a retreat. There is no interaction outside of the personal search quest for this question. So you dive within yourself all the time, from when you wake up to when you go to bed. The intensive, it's structured in a way that there are no distractions. There is no personal communications outside of the technique. So you dive within and you try to be one with this, with who you believe you are in that moment, with the truth of yourself in that moment. So it's a constant search for authenticity of what is your authentic you in that moment. And what emerges from this deep dive, then you can bring it out in a relationship. That's the communication part of the technique. In a dyad, it's called. You can express that relative or absolute truth that you found. It doesn't matter if it's a relative truth, if it's a fleeting moment. You might encounter first all your doubts. You may encounter first all your fears and unexpressed emotions, or the negative judgments of yourself. If that is what you have found by looking for your more authentic self, that is what you bring out. And by presenting it in the dyad, in this special relationship in which There will be no feedback, no judgment, only the attention of a conscious human being that is there for you and only receives you without giving any feedback back. That allows you to put in the net of relationships this thing that before was only within yourself and sometimes not even in the conscious space, but in the unconscious space. And by putting it outside of you, you can see it, and it's more, you're more free to let it go. So you put it there. If it's true, it will stay. If it's not true, it will evaporate. That's the process of the intensive. That's the process of the technique. So the good thing is that you don't have to know who you are, and nobody else is going to tell you. You don't have to know the truth of yourself. But by honestly deep diving into yourself and bringing out what you find into the net of relationships in this ordered way of being in relationship with another human being, then the truth starts to reveal, and some maybe deeply rooted fears and identifications that maybe were just a relative truth start to give space to some deeper level of truth. You What gets dissolved is the attention that is stuck on some things within yourself. Our attention sticks to things. It sticks to needs, sticks to fears, sticks to past experiences. And so our attention is always divided in many little rivers, in many little creeks. And by presenting all these things and in the relationship, then you start to free your attention and you're able to put more of this attention into who you are, into the real search of who you are. And this will be an intercultural intensive. So maybe Marina, you can tell something about the intercultural nature of this intensive.
Yes, a beautiful part of it is that they are people from different countries with different cultures, different languages. The common language is English, of course. But then the fact that you go into these diets, this communication, how the intensive is structured, you talk with people with different backgrounds. That it's very common with the fact that it's people from different cultures, that you can open your mind in a very different way. It's very different if you are surrounded only, so on top of all the work that the intensive does by itself, which is already very deep, very opening. On top of this, there's the intercultural aspect where you are with people from different cultures. So yes, you will be confronted with different ways of thinking, different ways of seeing the world, different ways of expressing yourself. And it's very interesting. And
Yeah.
also, if it's not your mother tongue, even if your mother tongue is another, using English, of course, is our common language, but also we have found that not having all the words to express makes you focus your attention to communicate only what has emerged from the technique. So it's an advantage if you're doing the intensive in a language that is not your mother tongue. It's
Yeah.
very interesting and it's also completely effective. And yes, this is
Yeah,
what I will
and
share.
when we are in a real relationship with another person, the other person mirrors us, but it mirrors us also from the point of view of that person and of that culture. So to have different mirrors in different positions really gives us a more round vision of ourselves, and it's different from just going abroad, doing a trip, or even chatting with people of different nationalities, because it doesn't produce that deep mirroring and deep transformation until it becomes a deep emotional and awareness experience. So when we connect with the person who is different from us, everybody is different from us, of course. So every time we interact with another person, truly, we are in front of a different universe. But when there's also a different culture involved and we really open up emotionally and on the plane of consciousness and we get mirrored back from that point of view, it really shows us things that in other contexts we don't see of ourselves. So it's really precious to the intercultural part. And plus, it also creates an openness to diversity that is also very important in our life, and but also in our world, for the world. it's important that we allow ourselves to be more open to diversity, to our diversity, because then authenticity is also being able and being free to express diversity, how we are different from others, how we are unique. Again, the intercultural element helps us in this. And then to be more able to accept other people's diversity. And then there's also space. I mentioned 3 days of meditation with the technique of the intensive, but the experience lasts 4 days. So the fourth day is completely dedicated to the integration part. So in integrating what truth has emerged from your process of deep diving and bringing out in the relationship, in the technique of the intensive, who you are. This will open up spaces of clarity, of vision, of values, of inspiration, then that, and also of deep ability to connect to each other, that needs to be channeled into our life, to not be just a bubble, an experience that we have done with in some special conditions, in a protected environment, with very special people, and then we go back to our life and it's totally different and we're not able to carry that with us. So we want to carry as much truth as possible that we have discovered on ourselves into our life, and that is the function of the integration day. So the rules of the intensive that are quite strict and that are required to focus all the attention on the topic of our quest, of our search, and to take away all the distractions and take away all the interactions that could lead us away from our truth. We start taking those rules away gradually, being able to talk to each other more in a free way, being able to do different things in different moments, to relax, to listen to ourselves and not only do the technique, but there would be some activities to bring these realizations that we have made into our choices and into important decisions of our life. So again, it goes back to the ability to choose and the choices in our life. And that's the moment in which we really can design a new phase of our life, starting from more based on the self and a little bit less on the protective mind. I use this word protective mind in a neutral way because it's not a bad mind, it's a protective mind, so we need it. And the good thing of the intensive is that it also respects the mind. We just set it aside for a moment, but we don't need to change. We don't need to change idea. Nobody is going to tell you who you are, what is true or not true. It's a process that happens in relationship. It's a process of self-discovery. You will be responsible even for the truth that you find, but and you can go back to all your ideas, all your beliefs. Nobody's going to ask you to change anything. It's not a system of beliefs that we present. It's a technique of self-inquiry, and then the space and the possibility to bring the things that we discover into practical choices and our vision for ourselves in the next period of our life. So what can you do if you want to bring more authenticity then, after all this information and inspiration that we hope these webinars brought to you? You can sign up to the Self-Awareness Intensive that takes place from the 24th to the 28th of July in Berlin. You will find the link in our bio on Instagram or on our website www.awareness-inspiration.com. You will find a page dedicated to the Self-Awareness Intensive in which you will find all the information and the possibility to sign up. But even if it's not your moment now for the Self-Awareness Intensive, you can sign up to the newsletter, so you will get updates for the next webinars and the next activities that we organize. We are always very active. And you will also receive once a month an interesting article that relates to personal growth, to self-awareness or life skills. We're not pressing or we're not spamming, but the main aim of our newsletter is to increase self-awareness. And you can be in touch on the social media, so on Instagram and on Facebook. Okay, thank you for your attention. Now we will stop the recording and we will leave space for your questions.